Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Steve Kinney. I'm a producer and engineer, and today we're going to be demystifying UAD plugins, their categories, and what kind of behavior you should expect when you use them. Before we get started, please hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Let me know what plugins that you really want to know about, and I'd be happy to use them on a live stream and deep dive them, talk about them. If you're new to my channel, please check out the Console Classic Sessions pack. It's one of the quickest ways to learn production-ready signal flows and signal chains that's used in studios around the world. It's available now for the UAD platform. Just check out my website. And while you're there, maybe pick up one of these awesome Stuito mugs. Really greatly appreciate your support on the channel. So all right, let's dive right into this. If you've just picked up an Apollo or one of the universal audio interfaces, I'm sure that you're really excited to get started, and you're probably just scouring the internet to find everything out that you can about the hardware, what it can do, what it can't do. Their platform and their plugins model hardware that was popularized at some point in time. So the way that they interact with your microphone or the way that they interact with your guitar, how they interact with your signal is based off of real gear. And that is probably one of the big reasons that you went out and picked it up. Now I'm going to break down this video into two categories, or at least we're going to talk about two categories: Unison plugins and non-Unison plugins. So let's first talk about Unison plugins. Unison plugins are plugins that are meant to interact with either your high-Z input on your Apollo or your mic pre on the back of your Apollo. Specifically, in those plugins, they've modeled the gain staging as well as the impedance, so it interacts with either your guitar, your bass, or your microphone very specifically to how the hardware interacted whenever the hardware was created. Now, some of this gear is really hard to find, like the original LA2s or a 1176 Rev Blue Stripe. So it's really cool that we're able to recreate this as many times as we want and have consistent results. All right, so let's dive into this and take a look at what we can do with Unison. So just diving right into console, we can see that Unison is also separated from just regular plugins via the interface. So at the top, you have the ability to choose a plugin on Unison. And when we click it, we have a few different subcategories versus when we click on the inserts, same menu pops up, but there's way more categories. We're going to kind of go through all of the categories and kind of one by one talk about what to expect from that category, as well as maybe opening up one or two of them and kind of seeing what to expect. So let's first take a look at Unison plugins, right? So we've got delays, guitar and bass plugins, preamp, and channel strips. In the delay column, what I have available right here is the SDD3000. This is a delay that was popularized by the Edge way back in the 80s and 90s and really throughout his career. It's a really great sounding delay, and it's good on a variety of sources. Highly recommend it. When we choose the guitar category, we have a bunch of different amplifiers. You probably would see something like a guitar pedal in there, so like, you know, the raw Proco distortion. It's like a rat, if you're familiar with rat pedals. So one way that I like to use the raw Proco distortion is I like to take this and run it into a different amp simulator and kind of hit the front of that amp sim for a different tone. So it's kind of cool to do that. Then of course we have amp sims like the Marshall Silver Jubilee, the Plexi Classic. There's tons of different amp sims in there, and inside of the amp sim, you have the ability to choose your different, microphone types. You have the ability to kind of play around with the volume on that. You have the ability to change the gain, change the EQ on the amp. This is like using an amp. It's pretty straightforward. Now on to preamps and channel strips. Of course, you've got all the legendary preamps like the Neve 1073, for example, right? You pull that up, and with this bad boy, you've got your basics here. So you've got your EQ, your phase reverse. You've got a output fader, and then you've got a clean output knob. So let's talk about this a little bit further. With all of the mic pre's that are modeled in here, pretty much all of them, they've modeled the impedance of whatever mic pre, they've modeled the output characteristics, they've modeled the EQ characteristics. So for example, in the Neve 1073, a lot of people don't know this, but believe it or not, if it's not engaged, your signal is still running through the circuit of the EQs. So you can get some really interesting saturation or overdrive if you're pushing these EQs up. Even though you're not using the EQ, it's still having a big impact on what's happening in the preamp circuit. Now let's kind of diverge from just the preamps. Let's take a look at something like a channel strip. So if we were to load up something like the SSL channel strip, the SSL channel strip and many other channel strips like the Neve or the API are divided into a number of sections. On the graphical user interface, we can see that we've got a preamp section, we've got a dynamics or compression section, and we've got a gate section, we've got a filter section, and then we've got an EQ section as well. And then lastly, we have a fader section. So for example, if I wanted to cut out the low end of my signal, say I'm recording like an acoustic guitar, right? I could make sure that the EQ is turned on. Then I could go and pull this high pass filter and filter out everything below 200 hertz, right? Get away from that low end rumble. And then I can engage the compression and then maybe have a bit of light compression with a fast release and a low threshold, and maybe get some, characteristics there that you might want. You just kind of bring the lows and the highs closer together. And then maybe I want some output distortion, so maybe I'll crank up this fader a bit and pull the output volume down, of course, to compensate for that extra loudness. All of those processes that I've just done would be very similar to using a real console or a real SSL 4000 console. So now that we've kind of talked about what the Unison plugins do, how they change the interaction between your mic, your guitar, and your bass via input impedance and the gain staging on your interface, let's just jump to the Inserts tab and let's walk through the categories and kind of explain what you should expect from each category. So we've already kind of talked about the delay plugin, the Korg 3000, but what about some of the other ones, right? So we've got a Galaxy Tape Echo. I've talked about this a lot on the channel. It's based off the RE201, which is an old tape echo. As the name suggests, right, with a tape echo, you can expect some really vintage sounding delays. Now, what is a delay? A delay is just going to be where your signal is repeated. Oftentimes it sounds like it's getting further and further away, or it makes it sound like an echo. If you were ever to, yell real loudly at a canyon, I'm sure you've heard what that sounds like. This is a digital representation or a digital representation of what a tape representation would be. Really cool sounding, and also highly recommend this one as well. Now let's talk about dynamics. What is in the dynamics folder? Well, dynamics is going to be compressors, and a compressor is basically going to take a signal that is very loud with very quiet parts, and it's going to try to push those loud parts down to where the quiet parts are, compressing the signal so that it's a lot closer together. For the sake of simplicity, a limiter works very similarly. Now, some of the plugins from the preamps and channel strips collections are also available in the dynamics section because it offers a compressor or a limiter in the channel strip as well. And it's totally cool if you want to use one of those in your session. It sounds great, it works. So next, if we were to look at the next category here, we have equalization. Of course, EQs are going to shape the frequency response of whatever you're miking or what your guitar sounds like. If you're familiar with a guitar amp, it's the same concept as what you can do on your guitar amp, where you can add some more mid-range or add a little bit more high-end sheen to it. And of course, all of the preamps and channel strips that have an EQ section are going to show up in this list as well. But there are some great standalone EQs that are pretty legendary that you have the ability to use as well. So you have something like the Pultec Pro, which is this awesome old tube equalizer, and it has this really nice gentle curve that you can apply and get some really cool sounds from. Now, while something like the Pultec is not going to be a very surgical EQ where you're going to be just completely cutting out one frequency range, or just really boosting this one particular band, it is really good for adding character and depth and some saturation to your signal. So it's a great one to use while you're tracking, to just kind of push your signal in one direction or the other. So it's really good for something like that. Now, we have touched on the guitar and bass sections before. There are other things out there, like for example, the Brigade chorus, right? This is like a chorus pedal. I forget which one this particular one's modeled after, but it's a very cool sounding chorus pedal, which you can use on acoustic guitars. You could use it even on background vocals and get some cool effects there. In the harmonic and tape subfolder, it's gonna be just like what it sounds. You're gonna find things that add a lot of harmonic saturation or tape saturation as well. So you'll find your tape sims like the Studers or the Ampexes, or one that they've created, something called Oxide Tape. Now, I love the Oxide Tape plugin. I use this one a lot. I've used this one a lot in Logic. Since migrating to Luna, I now use the Studer A800. But you can get a lot of really cool sounds from Oxide, and it's included with Luna, so you can use this as well. So the next subfolder is the mastering subfolder, and in it, of course, you will find everything related to mastering from your list of plugins. In here, you might find some EQs, you might find some special plugins like limiters, you might find something like the Ampex ATR102 tape plugin. It's a mastering tape plugin. So everything related to what you might use on a master bus, you're gonna find there. Now, I don't have anything in this next category, the microphone category, but what you'll find in the mic category is microphone modeling plugins. So Townsend Labs makes a really nice microphone, and it models and emulates other microphones. This is where you'd find that. Modulation, for those of you who don't know what modulation is, think chorus pedal on your guitar, or think a big chorus effect, or you could think synthesizer, how it's modulating, think like a sine wave. And of course, in here you will find a great example of this with the Studio D Chorus. Studio D Chorus is a great sounding piece of gear, and they've done an awesome job modeling that. Of course, I'm referring to the Roland Dimension D. The way it works is really quite simple. You just choose 4 different versions of modulation, and it does something really cool to your sound. It's why don't we jump into Luna and see what it sounds like. So I've got a lead vocal here, and here's what it sounds like on its own.
I wanted someone to shower me with sunshine, send me down a gentle April rain.
Okay, cool. Let's throw on the Studio D and see what that sounds like.
I wanted someone to shower me with sunshine, send me down a gentle April rain.
Really cool. So you can kind of hear how it has the original signal and the modulated signal, and it's kind of just going in and out of this weird phasey, spacey kind of thing. And it works really well on a stereo track, something like a group stereo bus, where you're having like group vocals all go to one bus. Some of them are panned left, some of them are panned right. We can demonstrate this as well. So let's go ahead and create a bus. And we will leave the summing off right now. We got our group vocals, and what we're going to do now is send all of our BGVs to group vocal bus. So now it's coming to this track right here. And what we're going to do is remove, we're going to assign Studio D. So let's pan some of these. Let's just listen to this. Okay, let's see.
Need someone, shower me with sunshine, send me down a gentle April.
So you can hear how it kind of spreads it out versus just having it off.
Need someone, shower me with sunshine.
So you hear while it's on, it really spreads the two vocals and makes it sound a lot bigger than just two vocals. It's a really cool effect. So now we've talked about the preamps and channel strips, so I won't really dive too far into them. Let's talk about reverb and room sounds. So with the reverbs, that basically just makes it sound like you're in either a really big room or a really small room, and you can blend how much of that effect that you want. A really cool reverb that I like to use often, I talk about it on the channel all the time, is the Lexicon 224. That is a digital reverb, and of course they've done a great job of making it sound that way. Contrast that with something like a plate reverb, which is a really big device that would vibrate to create this effect. We can demonstrate these as well. So let's check that out. Okay, so I've got my lead vocal and I've got the Lexicon pulled up here. And what you will see with this is you've got a number of different algorithms to choose from. You've got 1 through 8 here. And this is defaulted to a hall. If you read the manual, it says that just loading up the plugin and having any one of these 8 selected by default is, according to the manual of the original hardware, that's like the default best settings for the algorithm. But of course, we have these little sliders that we can tweak, so let's just listen to some of these on their own. And of course, we want to take it out of solo mode and just have a mix. Let's go 50-50 here, so 50% reverb, 50% original signal.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine.
Sounds pretty nice. Let's listen to a vocal plate.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine, send me down a gentle April rain.
So you can hear that digital artifacting going on in the background, and it sounds cool. It sounds like a digital reverb. Let's contrast that with something like pure plate, which is that plate reverb that we talked about. So here is what a plate reverb sounds like, and we'll also make this 50-50, so you can hear 50% reverb, 50% voice.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine, send me down a gentle April rain.
Sounds totally different. Same kind of reverb. One's a plate, one's a digital plate. But in the digital plate, you really hear the digital artifacting versus the pure plate, which is also really a plugin. It's a digital reverb, but it doesn't sound very digital. It sounds awesome. It sounds really good. Let's also take a look at the Galaxy Tape Echo. So we got the Galaxy Tape Echo pulled up, and let's go ahead and throw in the echo rate a little bit longer here. We've got our reverb and our delay enabled on this, but we haven't pulled the reverb up, so let's just listen to it with just the delay real quick.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine.
Sounds really good. I can change how much bass or treble that I want in that frequency, or I'm sorry, in that delay. And let's add in some of the reverb here.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine. Send me down a gentle April rain.
Really cool. Let's take a look at the reverb only. Now, the reverb on this was a spring, and let's see what that sounds like.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine.
Sounds like a spring. It sounds awesome. They did a great job with this one as well. This is why I like UAD. UAD, you guys are awesome. Now let's take a look at the Pultec. So here's the Pultec Pro on the vocal, and what I can do with this, I can boost, I can cut, I can add some gentle slopes and curves, and it sounds really good. So let's see what we can do here.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine. Send me down a gentle April rain.
So there's not a whole lot of boosting I would do to any of the high end or anything like that, but I would definitely probably try to attenuate if I didn't have a de-esser. So let's go ahead and do that.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine. Send me down a gentle April rain.
And let's see if we can just add a little bit of low-end character here.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine. Send me down a gentle April.
Pretty good, pretty good. Of course, with the Pultecs, again, a little bit goes a long way. You don't need to go a whole, you know, you don't need to go crazy with it. I mean, if you do, it'll act crazy. I mean, let's check what that sounds like.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine.
I mean, you can really go crazy with it, but again, a little bit goes a long way with that one. It's a great example of what that sounds like. Let's take a look at the SSL as well. So here is the SSL, and we have it in line mode, of course. Since this signal has already been recorded. And for the demonstration of what we talked about, I'm actually going to pull the output down already. I want to try to see if I can get this to clip and saturate. And I also want to make sure that the transformers are included in this signal, which, if you don't know, is the XFMR button. So we're going to make sure that that's turned on. In order for us to do that, we're going to have to flip this over to mic mode, and that's why I pulled the output down. So let's see where we're at here.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine. Send me down a gentle April rain. I'll recover, I'll spring back to life. On my own, I'll bloom, I'll thrive. I'll grow wild like a flower.
Real cool, real cool. Just smooth saturation. Even though there's a lot of it going on, it still sounds really smooth, sounds really cool. Now I could also take the EQ and maybe cut out some of that low end.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine. Send me down a gentle April rain. I'll recover, I'll spring back to life. On my own, I'll bloom, I'll thrive. I'll grow wild like a flower.
Something that's really cool about using the EQ to kind of pull pull back some of the high end as well as the mic to kind of saturate, is that also kind of acts as a de-esser of sorts. It saturates the high end and kind of pulls it down and messes it all up to where it's not as harsh anymore. So pretty cool. And then of course we could always throw a compressor in as well. Let's see what that sounds like.
I won't need someone to shower me with sunshine, send me down a gentle April rain. I'll recover, I'll spring back to life. On my own, I'll bloom, I'll thrive. I'll grow wild like a flower.
So again, these are extreme use situations, but we still have nice results even when we're just kind of going crazy with it. Thank you so much for watching up until this point. If you've made it this far, this again was just kind of a brief introduction to the different categories of UAD plugins and what you can expect from them and what you might want to use them for or how you could use them. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. If there's a plugin that you'd love to see a deep dive on and you really want to see what you can do to get the most from that particular plugin, leave it in the comments below. I'd be happy to cover it on a live stream and we can connect and interact. You can ask questions and I'd be happy to answer every single one of them. Outside of that, I might even be able to do a video on it where I deep dive and really cover all the nitty-gritty on whatever plugin that is. So I greatly appreciate it. All right, that's all I have. So thank you so much for watching and we'll see you on the next one.